When scanning a 1899 family image, a face appears that no one recognizes. Margaret Chen carefully positioned the antique photograph on her high-resolution scanner in her Denver, Colorado home office. As a professional archivist specializing in family genealogy, she had been hired by the wealthy Patterson family to digitize their extensive collection of 19th-century photographs. This particular image, dated September 1899, showed the Patterson family gathered on the front porch of their Victorian mansion for what appeared to be a celebration or reunion. The original photograph was remarkably well preserved, showing 13 family members arranged in 3 rows. Margaret had already identified most of the faces from the detailed family records provided by her client, Eleanor Patterson Williams, the family matriarch's great-granddaughter. The scanning process was routine work, until she loaded the high-resolution file onto her computer screen. As Margaret zoomed in to check the image quality, her eyes stopped on something that made her heart skip a beat. There, partially visible in the background through a window of the house, was the clear outline of a face, someone who appeared to be watching the family gathering from inside. The face was sharp and distinct, showing a young woman with dark hair pulled back, wearing what looked like a simple white dress. Margaret checked her notes again, counting the family members. According to Eleanor's detailed genealogical records, only 13 people should have been present that day. But this 14th person hidden in the window wasn't mentioned in any of the family documentation or identified in any of the other photographs from the same period. Margaret enhanced the image using professional photo editing software, adjusting contrast and sharpness to get a clearer view of the mysterious face in the window. The woman appeared to be in her early 20s, with delicate features and an expression that seemed both watchful and melancholy. Her clothing suggested she was dressed more simply than the elaborately dressed Patterson family members gathered outside. Intrigued by the discovery, Margaret called Eleanor Patterson Williams to discuss the finding. Eleanor, now 78 years old, was the family's unofficial historian and had spent decades documenting their lineage and collecting photographs, letters, and memorabilia. "That's impossible," Eleanor said over the phone, her voice puzzled. "I know everyone who lived in that house in 1899. My great-grandmother, Sarah Patterson, kept meticulous records of all family gatherings, household staff, and visitors. There's no mention of any young woman matching that description." Eleanor arranged to visit Margaret's office the following day to examine the enhanced image in person. When she saw the face in the window, her reaction was immediate and startling. "I've never seen this woman before in my life," she whispered, "but there's something familiar about her features, something about the shape of her eyes, and the line of her jaw reminds me of family portraits I've seen." Margaret suggested they begin a systematic investigation, starting with household employment records, visitor logs, and any correspondence from September 1899. If this woman had been present during the family gathering, there had to be some record of her existence somewhere in the Patterson family archives. Eleanor returned to Margaret's office 3 days later, carrying 2 large boxes filled with documents from 1899. Together, they spread out household ledgers, employment records, correspondence, and even grocery receipts across Margaret's large work table. The Patterson family had been remarkably thorough in their record-keeping, documenting everything from staff wages to social visits. The household employment records for September 1899 listed 3 servants: Mrs. Hannah O'Brien, cook; Thomas Murphy, groundskeeper; and Mary Collins, housekeeper. All 3 were accounted for in the family's other photographs and documents. There was no record of any additional domestic help or temporary staff during that period. The correspondence files revealed something more interesting. Sarah Patterson had exchanged several letters with her sister-in-law Martha Patterson, who lived in Boston. In one letter dated September 10, 1899, just 5 days before the family gathering, Sarah mentioned that Martha had written about sending someone to help with the preparations for our reunion. Margaret found Martha's reply letter, which was cryptic. "The girl I mentioned will arrive quietly and help where needed. She knows to remain discreet about her circumstances. Please ensure she is treated with kindness, as she has endured much hardship." Eleanor frowned as she read the letter. "This doesn't match any family stories I've heard. Why would Martha send someone to help? And why all this secrecy about circumstances and discretion?" The Pattersons weren't known for being mysterious about household help. Margaret suggested they research Martha Patterson's life more thoroughly, particularly focusing on her activities and associations in Boston during the 1890s. If Martha had sent this mysterious woman Understanding Martha's life might reveal the identity of the face in the window. Margaret's research into Martha Patterson's life in Boston revealed a surprising discovery. Martha had been actively involved with several charitable organizations that assisted young women in difficult circumstances, specifically organizations that helped women leaving prostitution, escaping abusive marriages, or recovering from other traumatic situations. Eleanor was shocked by this revelation. "The family never talked about Martha's charitable work," she said. "They always described her as a quiet widow who kept to herself after her husband died. I had no idea she was involved in social reform work." Margaret found records at the Boston Public Library showing that Martha had been a significant donor to the Boston Female Moral Reform Society and had served on the board of the Temporary Home for Fallen Women. These organizations provided safe housing, job training, and new identities for women seeking to escape dangerous or degrading situations. A breakthrough came when Margaret discovered a letter in Martha's papers, filed separately from the Patterson family collection at the Massachusetts Historical Society. The letter, dated September 8, 1899, was addressed to Sarah Patterson and provided more explicit details. "Dear Sarah, I am sending Miss Rose Sullivan to assist with your gathering. She's a bright young woman who has successfully completed our training program and needs a fresh start away from Boston. She has excellent domestic skills and can help with preparation and service. However, I must ask that her presence be kept confidential, as there are still those in Boston who might wish her harm. She will travel under the name Rose Murphy and has papers documenting her employment history. Please treat her as family during her stay." The letter was signed with Martha's distinctive handwriting and sealed with her personal wax stamp. For the first time, Margaret and Eleanor had a name for the mysterious face in the window: Rose Sullivan, a young woman seeking refuge and a new beginning. Armed with the name Rose Sullivan, Margaret began searching Boston records from the 1890s. What she discovered painted a tragic but ultimately hopeful picture of a young woman's struggle for survival and redemption in late 19th century America. Rose Sullivan had been born in 1878 to Irish immigrant parents in Boston's North End. Her father had died in a factory accident when she was 12, leaving her mother to support 3 children through laundry work. When Rose was 16, her mother became ill, and Rose had been forced to seek employment to support the family. Court records from 1896 showed that Rose had been arrested during a police raid on a boarding house known for prostitution. However, instead of being imprisoned, she had been referred to Martha Patterson's reform organization as part of a progressive program designed to help rather than punish young women caught in desperate circumstances. Margaret found Rose's file in the archives of the Temporary Home for Fallen Women. The records showed that Rose had spent nearly 3 years in their program, learning to read and write, training in domestic skills, and slowly recovering from the trauma of her experiences. Her case file included notes from counselors describing her as intelligent and determined and eager to build a respectable life. The most revealing document was Rose's own handwritten testimony, required as part of the program. "I was never a willing participant in the life I was forced to live. I did what I had to do to keep my family from starving. I dream of a day when I can work in a respectable household and hold my head high in society. I want to prove that a person's past does not determine their future." Eleanor wiped away tears as Margaret read Rose's words aloud. "She was just a child," Eleanor whispered. "A child forced into an impossible situation who fought her way back to respectability." Margaret's continued research revealed that the Patterson family's involvement with Rose Sullivan was part of a larger, previously unknown pattern of quiet philanthropy. Sarah Patterson, it turned out, had been one of Martha's most trusted partners in helping women transition to new lives. In Martha's detailed correspondence with Sarah, Margaret found evidence that Rose was not the first woman to receive refuge at the Patterson home. Between 1895 and 1905, at least 6 other women had spent time at the Patterson estate, working as temporary domestic help while establishing new identities and building respectable employment histories. "Your home has become a sanctuary," Martha had written to Sarah in 1898. "These women arrive broken and leave whole. You have given them something more valuable than money. You have given them dignity and hope." The arrangement was carefully structured to protect both the women and the Patterson family's reputation. The women would arrive with false employment references, work for several months while learning proper domestic skills, and then be placed in permanent positions with other respectable families who were part of the network. Eleanor discovered additional evidence in her great-grandmother's personal diary, which she had never fully examined before. Sarah's entries from September 1899 provided intimate details about Rose's stay. Rose arrived today and immediately proved herself capable and hard-working. Martha was right. She has the bearing of a lady despite her unfortunate past. The family gathering went smoothly, and Rose remained appropriately discreet. I find myself hoping she will choose to stay longer, as she has brought a quiet joy to our household. A later entry revealed Sarah's personal connection to Rose's situation. I cannot help but think of my own daughter Catherine, who died so young. Rose is near the age Catherine would have been, and I see in her the same intelligence and spirit. Perhaps helping Rose is a way to honor Catherine's memory. Margaret's investigation took an unexpected turn when she discovered the identity of the photographer who had taken the 1899 family portrait. The photographer's stamp on the back of the image led her to the archives of Morrison & Sons Photography, a Denver studio that had served wealthy families throughout the Rocky Mountain region. In the Morrison archives, Margaret found the photographer's notes from the Patterson session. James Morrison Jr. had written detailed observations about each assignment, including technical notes and personal impressions. His entry for September 15, 1899 proved illuminating. Photographed the Patterson family reunion today. 13 family members arranged on the front porch. Mrs. Patterson specifically requested that I not include the young woman assisting with the service, though she was visible through the parlor window during the session. Mrs. Patterson explained that the girl was shy and preferred not to be formally photographed. I respected this wish, though the girl's reflection is likely visible in the background. This note confirmed that Rose's presence in the window was not accidental. She had deliberately positioned herself where she could observe the family gathering without being included in the formal portrait. This suggested a complex mix of curiosity, longing, and self-awareness about her position in the household. Margaret also found Morrison's business ledger, which showed that Sarah Patterson had paid for an unusually large number of prints of the family portrait, far more than would typically be needed for family distribution. When Margaret cross-referenced these prints with letters in the Patterson archives, she discovered that Sarah had sent copies to several families who were part of Martha's reform network. The photograph had served a dual purpose. It documented the Patterson family gathering, but it also served as a subtle advertisement to other potential benefactors, showing that helping reformed women could be accomplished discreetly without disrupting normal family life. Margaret's most exciting discovery came when she found a reference to Rose Sullivan in Denver City records from 1900. Rose had remained with the Patterson family for nearly a year after the September 1899 gathering, long enough to establish herself firmly in Denver society under her new identity as Rose Murphy. The 1900 Denver City Directory listed Rose Murphy as head housekeeper for the prestigious Hartwell family on Capitol Hill. Margaret contacted the current owners of the Hartwell mansion, who had maintained extensive records of the property's history. They confirmed that Rose Murphy had worked for the original Hartwell family from 1900 to 1905 and had been highly regarded for her efficiency and discretion. More remarkable still, Margaret discovered that Rose had used her position and savings to bring her younger sister from Boston to Denver in 1902. Immigration records showed that Mary Sullivan had joined her sister, who was now living under the name Rose Murphy, and had found employment as a seamstress in a respectable dress shop. The trail led Margaret to an unexpected conclusion. Rose had eventually married Thomas Murphy, the Patterson family's groundskeeper, in 1905. The marriage records showed that Thomas had left the Patterson employ to start his own landscaping business, with Rose as his business partner. Eleanor was amazed by this development. "Thomas Murphy was mentioned in family stories," she said. "My great-grandmother always spoke fondly of him and said he had married a wonderful woman who helped him build a successful business. I never realized that woman was Rose." Margaret found more evidence in Denver Newspaper Society pages from the 1910s, which mentioned Mr. and Mrs. Thomas Murphy attending various community events and supporting local charities. Rose had successfully transformed herself from a desperate young woman into a respected member of Denver society. The final pieces of Rose Sullivan's story came together when Margaret discovered that Rose and Thomas Murphy had established their own charitable foundation in 1915, specifically designed to help young women transition to new lives. The Murphy Foundation had operated quietly for over 30 years, helping hundreds of women escape difficult circumstances and build respectable careers. Eleanor was stunned to learn that her family's estate had been one of the Murphy Foundation's most consistent donors. Sarah Patterson had continued supporting Rose's work until her death in 1920, creating an endowment that helped fund the foundation's activities for decades. "My great-grandmother never told anyone about this," Eleanor said, examining the foundation's records. "She quietly supported Rose's work for over 20 years, but the family never knew the full story." Margaret found letters between Sarah Patterson and Rose Murphy spanning 2 decades, revealing a deep friendship that had developed between the two women. In one letter from 1918, Rose had written, "You saved my life in ways you may never fully understand, not just by giving me shelter, but by treating me as a human being worthy of respect and kindness. I have dedicated my life to passing that gift forward to others." The correspondence also revealed that Rose had been present at many Patterson family events over the years, though always discreetly and never in formal photographs. She had become a trusted family friend while maintaining her separate identity as Mrs. Thomas Murphy. Margaret realized that the face in the window of the 1899 photograph represented not just a moment of hidden observation, but the beginning of a lifelong relationship between 2 remarkable women who had worked together to help others find hope and redemption. Margaret's comprehensive research culminated in a presentation to the Denver Historical Society, which agreed to create an exhibition documenting the previously unknown charitable network that had operated in Denver during the early 1900s. The 1899 Patterson family photograph, with Rose Sullivan's face clearly visible in the window, became the centerpiece of the display. Eleanor Patterson Williams donated the Patterson family's complete archives to the Historical Society, ensuring that Sarah Patterson's humanitarian work would finally receive public recognition. The exhibition, titled "Hidden Helpers: Women's Networks of Compassion in Early Denver," drew visitors from across the region. The Murphy Foundation's records were also donated to the Historical Society, revealing the full scope of Rose's later charitable work. Researchers discovered that the foundation had helped over 800 women between 1915 and 1945, providing job training, housing assistance, and new identity documentation for women seeking to escape various forms of exploitation. Rose Sullivan Murphy had lived until 1967, dying at age 89 as one of Denver's most respected philanthropists, though few people had known about her early life or the circumstances that had brought her to the city. Margaret tracked down Rose's descendants, who were amazed to learn about their ancestors' remarkable transformation and lifelong dedication to helping others. Eleanor kept the original 1899 photograph, now properly preserved and documented. She often reflected on how a routine digitization project had uncovered a hidden chapter of her family's history and revealed the extraordinary story of a young woman who had refused to let her past define her future. The mysterious face in the window had indeed changed everything, not just for the modern family members who discovered her story, but for the hundreds of women whose lives had been transformed by the compassionate network that had grown from one moment of kindness in 1899. Rose Sullivan's journey from desperation to dignity became a testament to the power of human compassion and the possibility of redemption in even the most difficult circumstances.